Hello, welcome to, I don't know what the name of this is going to be. All right, the first thing I want to do on this disc is I want to talk about this new material that I found. One of my customers called me from Florida, and she told me about this new fabric called Rocklon, R-O-C-L-O-N. And what it is drapery lining fabric. Okay, and what's neat about it is it doesn't fray, so like you can rub that edge. You can cut it into any shape that you want. You can paint on back or front. I chose, it has a very smooth side, which by the way you can make into a projection screen type thing. You paint it silver and then you can put your TV movies and stuff on it. But I choose to paint on the rough side because I do a lot of dry brushing. And so now there is no more need for these side hems. You can just cut it into the shape that you want it. And it hangs flat, which canvas, if it gets cold, doesn't hang flat. It kind of crumples and it'll stay in its frozen shape. And then wood is not weatherproof. This is supposedly weather resistant or weatherproof as well. So you could paint and varnish both sides. Should you choose to, you could paint your design on both sides. You could glue the hem instead of sewing it because it's lightweight, more lightweight than the canvas is. It makes it much more flexible. We've done a whole class on this at convention, and I've rolled it up. You can iron this with extra high heat. I ironed it on linen and it started smoking, but it did not turn black. So then I backed it down to cotton, and I got, I think you can see on here, I got a piece with some creases in it. And I wasn't going to take the piece, and I can feel the bump on this side, but on this side I really can't. So I pressed this after I made it black, and I didn't apparently press down here. I had some through the middle. But so you can iron this and take out any of your wrinkles and things like that. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, the neat thing about this is you could also do, because look at the drape. Isn't it just beautiful the way it drapes? I mean, you can kind of even, it's almost fabric-like. What I didn't say is this is, I believe, this is blackout fabric for curtains. So you go if I could talk, you go to Joann's, and it's on the big rolls in the drapery fabric section, or the home decor fabric section, and there's different weights of it. This is the heaviest weight that they make. You can choose whichever weight you want to, but it's the blackout curtain fabric. They won't probably know what it's called, so you'll have to just say blackout drapery fabric. It comes in 54-inch wide sections, and I got, let's see, it's $5.99 a yard. What's great about that, I was paying something like, I don't know how many feet I was getting in a roll, but I was paying like $80 for a roll of the canvas that's pre-primed. And so this at $5.99 I know is at least a third of the cost of the roll of canvas. So very flexible, very wonderful. We're really excited to use this. Base the background. This was already based black. I'm going to use this extra large stencil brush to base this with True Blue. You want to use a stiff bristled brush because I really need a roller for this. It goes much faster, but I ran out of rollers, and I don't live near Roller Town, which just stinks. As we get closer to the top, what I want to do is I'm going to brush mix, oops, spitting paint, oh that's lovely, brush mix into black. Let's get this on camera. Okay, so let me cover up my faux pas here. As I get closer to the top up here, like I said, much more work. I'd rather have a roller, but I guess it's good to see how we can do all kinds of things. I'm going to brush mix just a little bit of the black and bring it down into the blue, and then slowly I'll get more and more black as we get higher up on the piece. You do this while it's wet, and it becomes much easier to fade. More black. going to pick up a little bit more blue and blend up into that color. What we don't want to see is we don't want to see a transition line. Let me turn this off. Maybe you can see a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to have to get some new lights for in here because as we go into the fall season, my light is getting wonky in my studio here. Okay, so run that up. And as we blend down to the bottom, we will blend into white. See, this allows you, now my brush needs to be hammered because it is, it's gotten loose. I am really a brush abuser. See how that's looking. I can see it better on camera than I can anywhere else. Okay, so go on to more pure color, blend it up. Blending it down. Only pure color down here. Okay, this is going to take a while to dry too. A bit black. There's the top. I'm going to trim this with scissors after I get it done. It trims so easily, you wouldn't believe it. I wanted to show that. If you get something wonky on it, it just really fixes really nicely. Yeah, a roller would have had this done by now, the whole entire thing. These brushes are great because they do base coat this type of fabric, but I think it's pain. Okay, now I'm going to get much stronger black at the top. I'm going to fade it down in and hold on to it. Ooh, pressed a little hard there. What do you think? Yeah, big streak in the middle of the piece. So how do we cover that up? Base coat is our best eraser. So we'll just go back into that color. Now what I'm going to do before I go any further, because I am getting black streaks, before I go any further, what I'm going to do is take my paper towel and I'm going to wipe out that color, which will help neutralize it just a little bit. Then I'm going to neutralize it in the blue, which means I'm going to totally work the blue into the piece, into the brush. Okay. Back in the middle. Get a nice base. I think I found my unshooken part of my paint. Shake it up a little better. I don't use True Glue very much, but it looks like I'll use the whole bottle today. This works much better if you have something wet to blend into, so I got to get it wet with blue first. Okay, and now I've got that wet, I'm going to go into a little bit of white. White will probably make a pretty sudden difference, so I'm going to be a little careful with it. There's not anything really hard with this, because if you screw it up, you can go back and you can fix it. So, you know, never feel like something is too advanced because, you know, it's just a matter of basing. And not trying is the worst thing that you could ever do. So get in there, get your brushes wet. Don't worry about failing. Okay. Make sure that we have a nice fade. Once I get it based all the way down here, then you do your final. Now I'm going to just put fingerprints here. Do your final fade up. And I've got this so wet. And like I said, roller, much faster. So if I was doing this with a roller, then I would just be picking up the paint dirty brush in the roller and then rolling it up and down the piece. Now this is going to be one of those great moments to use a blow dryer. I think this got just a little bit too light for me down here. Too big a light area. Gonna tone it down a little with the blue. Got away from me, I think. I want it to be a little bit brighter, not scary brighter, although we are doing Halloween. Oops. Now this design that I've got drawn out is so darn busy that, you know, you're never going to notice some of these fingerprints and things like that on the sides, because I have got a lot going on. I like holidays like Thanksgiving and, well, you know, I like these banners because you can just kind of really do scary things with color and contrast and things like that you would never do for like inside your house or, you know, for everyday use. So I have been enjoying these to just kind of take a color vacation, go try things out. Like I said, this middle section gets the moon in it as it stands right now. Whether or not that is still true by the time you get to it, meaning that I may have changed my mind by then. So that is about where we're sitting right now. I have got nice fingerprints in there. My brush is in water. I have dirty fingers. I'm gonna let this dry overnight. This stuff is longer to dry. It's like canvas. If you have wood, it's gonna dry almost instantly. If you find that it's rough because you were brushing on, I can see some spots that'll probably be rough. When I get finished and it's all dry, then I'll lightly sand it with maybe a 250 or 200 grit sanding disc, and that will take down any rough areas. It does not normally become rough, but I know that canvas and sometimes fabric can get rough when you put a bunch of paint in it. So that'll just knock it back just a hair so you don't have rough spots. Here we have the, let's see, we have the base coats on here. So I dried my stuff. Notice here on my edge I have just a little bit of fingerprints type stuff, but I have a plan for a border out here, so I'm not worrying about where I put my fingers, and besides that, by the time I put all my top details, it won't matter either. This banner right here is a work in progress, so don't base coat it the colors if you're watching the video that I say here, because they are, that I think is going to change. I'm not sure I'm liking that too much. The background moon is golden straw, and then the pumpkin is burnt orange. The kitty cat is lamp black. Okay, this banner, for the purposes of right here, is desert turquoise right now, but I don't think it's going to stay that color. So I'm going to use my true blue and white right now. I'm playing with my lettering down here too. When I base coated these, I just used my regular brushes, and they work just fine on this this fabric, the rock lawn that I used. I'm going to get my palette knife, and I want to mix some blue and white. I want it light enough blue to see. And what I need to do, I'm going to dry rub it. So you need to make yours lighter than this area down here. I want to dry rub in the background behind my boo letters, because if I make them black, I want the spider web that is going in the letters to show. So you need to adjust it so it's like 2 values lighter than your background. It's almost could be a brush mix, except I'm going to use one of those dry rubby brushes, and that means that I can't quite brush mix it because it needs to be pre-mixed. So I'm going to use the dome stencil go into my paint, dry paint on a dry paper towel. Okay, dry it off completely. And then in my background, just want to lighten it somewhat back there. Could have used a bigger brush, I guess. It's the one I had. Okay, so that's not going very fast. So I'll leave a little bit more paint. When I know I'm going to put something on there, like spider webs and the boo and stuff like that, I can have it be a little bit streakier. I don't have to be as cautious. Maybe I want a little bit more white. So one of the other reasons this might not be showing up so well is because I don't have a value change that's bright enough. Get that on there, behind the letters. Doesn't have to stop or start any specific place. Just make sure it stops and starts gently, not with a solid line. Build it up. The nice thing is, if you're a little bit afraid of techniques like this, you can sneak up on it. You don't have to get there all at one time. I'm going to put a little bit more white in mine. We have had our first really cold day. 29 degrees last night. It was brrr. However, it makes me feel very much like getting this finished so I can hang it up. And I've totally erased my pattern line. The nice thing on canvas or fabric, when you've traced it the first time, if you lose your place, you can't put the lines back on there because you can't see very well through the tracing paper on this type of fabric or material. But as soon as you get something base coated, that makes it easier to place. So now that I have this banner line, I'll lay my pattern, my tracing back under there. Then I'll be able to retrace my letters back on. And so we'll decrease, as we get lighter and lighter, we'll decrease the amount of area that we are doing that in. And I can move this so we can see the whole effect. It probably would have been better if I would have, when I was doing my mixing, if I'd have got it even maybe a couple values lighter down here and I wouldn't have to do this step. But it's nice to see how you can fix things. Trace my pattern on and my guy here so that I can see kind of where he falls and stuff. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to use one of the Crescent stencil brushes, and I'm going to not do it just quite like dry brushing, like dry rubbing. I'm going to load a little bit of paint in there, wipe it off on the towel a little bit, and it's going to be more like a slip-slappy kind of technique, because on this orange I don't think it's really going to show very well. Well, it's showing better than I thought. So we'll make it scratchy. A little texture is a good thing. Do I like that? You know, I don't think I do like that, actually. So what will we do if we don't like something like this? We wet another brush and we just go ahead and wipe that off. And what I'll do is find a paper towel, dry that off. I'm going to be careful not to take my pattern off. I'm going to avoid that area while it's drying. Okay. Thought I would get it. I guess I transitioned enough in color that that's not an issue over there. So now I rubbed off more, and we'll do it like a dry rub. I didn't like how much texture I was getting. I don't want the pumpkin to be the complete center of interest. I think the kitty cat's going to have to be that. We'll see what happens in the end. You know, you never quite know what you're doing when you're doing these things, or at least I don't. So we'll highlight in the centers of these sections. Just rubbing. It's shape following, so make sure that you arch where the pumpkin arches. We're not quite dry over there. Always start in the brightest area first. So if you are, you know, if it's going to be brightest here and you've got a fresh load of paint, always start where the nose is or where you want things to show better. I'm going to go back and do a little bit more there, but I'll reduce the area that I cover. I want him to look sectioned. So notice that I'm doing this far section at the end of the load on my brush. Go back over here now. I think he's dry enough. Shape following. Now maybe I can have a little bit of texture, so not so wipey. Yeah, that's better. It was just too big a transition in color. Just a little bit of wipe. And a little bit of texture and shape following texture. I didn't like that slip slap like I thought I was going to. We also need to make sure that we do the sections on the top of the pumpkin, and as I'm allowing this to dry, I'm noticing that it's not very bright still, so I'll need to beef that up just a little bit. Orange is a very transparent color. And once we shade, we got to get a little bit more transition as well. Put that down here, add a little bit more. Sometimes it's just a building process. I'm sitting here forgetting to talk. I picked up some primary yellow to beef up my colors here. I don't want that to scream at me. I've got a dirty brush. I'm going to do that scratchy, rubby thing. A little bit more paint. The undirtier my brush gets with the orange, the brighter the yellow is going to be. So I want to be careful as I mix. Not to change completely what I'm doing because it'll become just a yellow highlight. That's getting better. Without reloading, go up here, give yourself a few more highlights. I think for right now, I think we can leave that. I'm liking that I'm seeing the transition. I'm going to wait and see what happens when we float the sections. So I'll wash my brush out now so that I can reuse it later if I need to beef up sections. We've been having technical difficulties here in the studio, so I have been filling in while I've been waiting for them to be resolved. So what I have done, I have based my eyes golden straw. Base coats you don't need to see. And I have based my lettering black. I do like it now that I have it brighter behind. Based my lettering and then used a thinner liner brush for my spider web. So that's just trace and base. Add a little bit of water to your paint so that it's thin enough to flow. And now it's time to add some detailing to our pumpkin. I think what I do when I'm designing these things, and like I've told you before, you always get the DVDs are always designed on camera. I decide on an area that I know what I want to do, and so then I'll build that up and then I'll add from that area. So right now I'm more sure about my pumpkin than I am about the cat or any of the other elements. So I'm just going to work on the pumpkin, get him up to a certain place, and then I should feel a little better about this. So for our eyeballs, we want to use just a ratty old filbert brush, and we want to pick up the primary yellow, and we want to just slip slap just a little texture in the middle of the eyes and the nose so that it becomes like candlelight. Just get that a little slippy slappy. Rough texture is good. Can even be a little raised if you don't mind it. So this will be where that candlelight kind of stuff is coming through. Okay, and then we'll pick up a little bit of white as well. Using, what am I using? Just titanium white. So in my dirty brush, and then that will be slip slapped just a little bit stronger up the middle. So it's a white yellow kind of color. And let that dry, and then we'll shade some detail. We're going to float on our pumpkin with traditional burnt sienna, and we're going to float it on both sides, so do like a flip float, but we're not going to do it at once. We'll let it dry before we do it. You're going to do it on the outside edges and on either side of these dividers, the sections, and then when it dries you'll go back and do the other sides. Made it flat to the eyes. And you notice I'm just not really struggling too hard to make this all be perfecty. Okay, we don't need, the world has way too many perfect painting people. We need to have a little bit less perfection, a little more fun. My opinion, I guess. And I want a high standard without everybody having a heart attack about it. Okay, so here we go, floating on this other edge. So I'm using a pretty big brush, like a number 1, but I only have, a little bit floated, so that's why we can use that really big brush. And we'll go up to the top. And we want to be a little bit more cautious up here. Oops. Of our paint, we might turn our brush to an angle a little bit. Okay, and when we dry, we'll reverse. Waiting to dry, I based the stem with honey brown. And I started shading over here just to see how it would look, and I think it's going to look good, but I think we're going to need a method to do that, so I'll show you that in just a second. Now it's time, we're going to use that great big brush again, and we're going to shade the eyes, and we have to do this in drying sections as well. So get a nice float on your brush, and just one swipe across the eye. If it's too wide, then make it narrower. This is a traditional burnt sienna. It's very transparent color. Regular burnt sienna is not quite as transparent, but it's nice to have a transparent color sometimes. I like it. Okay, it helps if I turn my piece. I need to do that to you. Whoops, stay in the lines. Yeah, the best fix for some things is just to tap your finger on it. I'm not a big proponent of painting with your fingers, but sometimes it's just nice just to get it off there quickly. Okay, so I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do those flip floats going the other way. So, oops, stay out of your base coats, stay out of your eyes. With this, you want to keep adding paint each time so that you get enough color on there. And add more water as you need it to. Okay. It's a nice float. Okay, and we can do the top as well. And these aren't as wide, so I'm turning my brush just a little bit. Okay, it's looking like it's getting some sections. I think we're going to need to deepen it. We're going to deepen the shading, which means smaller and more controlled. We're going to deepen the shading in the center here, so it should be within the float you already did. So if you have a microscopic float, then you need to unmicroscopic it before you do this step. Because what will happen is this value of orange is, maybe we'll call it, say, we'll pretend, because I don't have my value scale right in front of me, it's in a book someplace. Anyway, so we'll call this value, say, a 6. Then the, okay, so we've got this value, then this value, then this value. And so what I've done is say we call that a 6 or a 5 or something like that. Then you're going to step up to the next value and then the next value. But if you leap, those two together are just way too strong and too intense all of a sudden as a leap. It's like having boards missing from a bridge that you walk over. You don't want to have a big gape and you have to jump and leap to it. That's what your eye has to do then. So if you don't have this one out far enough, like this is the base and then the next color and then the final shade, then it's just not as attractive and it's more difficult for your eye. So then we'll go in and just deepen that, and now we can finally see that we have those sections going on. Isn't it funny how hard we have to work to get there? Okay. This float needs to be smaller. I'm still using the same big brush, but I'm just not floating. I don't have as much material on my brush so that I can, but it's nice because it carries a lot of water, so it'll, when you have a little bit rougher texture, your float doesn't want to float as good as it could. So having a little bit of extra water can be a really good idea. And notice how I just stroked there a few times. Sometimes just restroking will blend it and it causes, it's a blending type technique. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm pushing a little bit harder, a little bit harder. And I'm running out of color because that's a big area, but I'm going to make it work. Okay, and ta-da, it worked. Okay, and we'll do the hat up here. I guess it's not really a hat. It's our little pumpkin top. This one was tough for me. I didn't want to go same old, same old. I've done a lot of Halloween lately. And, you know, I had pumpkins with ghosts and things, but I've got 3 or 4 patterns with those. So it was really tough for me to come up with something that was a really different look. And once I finally got an idea, it was like, let's get going then. Okay, I think we're going to use the same russet color and we're going to shade the stem. I'm running out of room on the palette, which means it's probably time to turn a photo in for you. It's probably going to be time for me to change palettes. So what we're going to do is shade on either side. Now that's a big transition there from the honey brown to that, but for some reason it works that way. So maybe if you get too floaty, blot your brush a little bit. I'm going to show where the sections overlap in front of each other. Time for a smaller brush. I'm starting to get like running into myself. Okay, so we'll just float on all the edges of the stem. And then we'll float down the middle of the stem too. Just kind of randomly create those, what do you call them? The texture in the stem. Stems can be such a loose thing, so try not to overwork them. They really need to be kind of, I don't know, stem-like, I guess. I find when I'm painting and I'm focusing, I lose my words. I'll be thinking about painting and I won't know what I'm trying to say to you. Okay, so then we'll make a little stem line go in here with our russet. A little bit of water would be good. We don't want to make it look like it's 3-sectioned, but we do want to make it look like it's got a little texture. We'll get an old dry brush and pick up a little bit of the golden straw. Oops. Dry it off a little bit more. And just to highlight a little bit on this stem. Okay, and if you make it too muddy, which I think I just kind of did, then no problem, just go back and float one more time. I'll switch to a liner brush and do the same thing to get it more focused. That dry brushing, what it means is it gives the look of dry paint, which means it should look kind of scratchy when you put it on. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dry brush. The dry rubbing that we talk about has to be a dry brush because it will come off wrong. It will come off like a wash if you don't have it be perfectly dry. So there is a difference in the two techniques. Okay, so let's not be afraid of having the stem show up. Let's go ahead and bold up those highlights just a little bit more. The nice thing about Halloween is it can be wild. You can have some pretty amazing colors. Cat right now, and I have based the bow with leaf green, and I based the banner with leaf green. I've got his eyes. I had to adjust his eyes, so I've got his eyes based with true blue and a little bit of white. And what I want to do now is, and I've tucked a little bit of gray on his nose, a value 5 gray, and around his eyes just a little to soften that into a circle. Not so sure about these eyes yet, so I'll either edit this out or you guys will get to see the whole thing. So I'm going to float with true blue at the base of the eye to deepen the color. I have kitty cat eye pictures everywhere. I assume once we get the eyes painted, the pupils painted in there, that it'll be a little bit less zombie looking. Okay, and then I'm going to float with a little bit of the white plus the light blue, except where I'm all wet. So I guess I'll have to wait. So now I'll float. I'm going to float sea strokes of color to the inside of the eye. Blot with your mop, which is your finger. Oops, keep it off of his head. I'm doing the eyes before I do any rubbing and stuff on the cat because I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing. And we'll just clean up our mess as we go. Okay, now his eyes are going to be black, so we're going to get some black on our... And they're going to have that kind of cat-esque look to them. I'm going to keep them up off of the bottom of the eye. They're going to go all the way to the top. A little water in my paint. Okay, I think I wanted to go down a little bit further. Trying to decide which one looks more kitty cat looking. Okay, we'll leave that like that. Okay, so then we find out that we're not really zooming in for yet either. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken white and just kerplunked a shiny thing right on either side of his, on the same sides of his eyes. And then we're going to take just a little bit over here. Give it that other shine. Okay, and for right now we're going to leave his eyes alone. And what we need to do is a little mouthy poo. Okay, so his mouth is going to be gray as well. So value 5 gray, which is... And we're just going to make his little mouth kind of smile. And I've skipped my lines. I don't have mine being as big a mouth thing. I'm thinking he might be a little wonky. I'm going to dry him and erase my other lines. Okay, so when I erased it, I didn't like how my, what you call it there, was wonky, the other side of his mouth. So what I'm going to do now is dry brush up his nose, shape following strokes so it arches. Comes right off of that nostril and the nose tip. Okay, and that gives him just a little bit of a forehead kind of thing going on. Follow up and over his eyes. Okay, gives him a little bit. And give him just a little bit of a chin. It's going to swallow right there because it's got wet black paint. I have a space heater running right now, which means I can't turn my blow dryer on. I could, but I'm not gonna. Okay, so we'll get a little bit of the same gray color. And let's just line his ear over here. We don't have an ear on that side. Come on, dry. Dry brush. His chin. Okay, so we're gonna get that same gray. Brush mixing a medium gray. And we're gonna try to make him smile evenly this time. There, like it, much better. Okay, and then he's got just, we're gonna keep him simple. Keep that up there. Now I'm gonna go to a really fine brush, a fine liner, and I'm gonna get a kind of a, like a number 7 gray. Okay, and we want to do his whiskers. And I had some drawn. Let's see what I have drawn. I don't think I like the ones that I had drawn, so we'll go ahead and we'll just do a bit brighter. Gotta have a lot of water. Now we'll go into pure white with water, dirty brush, so it's going to be a little tainted with the gray. And let's give those whiskers a highlight. Whoops, I don't know if I could paint straight. See me get the palsy here. So right up the middle of the highlight of the whisker. The key is to try to put it down without leaving a big glommy stroke thing there. However, I think that will do. Okay, and now we need to do some fur on his little face. Not very much. I think we'll have some little whisker type things going over his eyes. Turn your project. Try to keep it out of the paint. You can definitely tell I was doing it naturally one way and not so naturally the other. Okay, and then we have our whiskers coming out of our ears. I'll bring this in a little closer. Give him a little highlight going over his nose. Smiley one. Okay, I'm thinking we're going to call his little face done. We do need to rub on his face just a touch. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe not. We'll check. So what we're going to do to float on the side of this is we're going to wet it with water. Generously work it in. It's kind of a canvasy thing, or it's got that cloth feel to it, so I'm going right over the elements here. Work that in every old which way. Do half at a time, don't do both because you'll run out of space. And then do a really giant float with your traditional, get a jam fest going on in the other room. They are cleaning and installing paints. Good music. Okay. And you're going to have traditional burnt sienna, and we're going to start at the top. I don't even have to hit the line, I just want to stay off the blue because I don't want to patch my blue. Get that all the way over to the edge. Okay, and then we're going to start walking it out. Now we could dry rub this, but I wanted something a little bit stronger. If yours sucks, then what you can do is you can just re-wet it and wipe it off. Okay, so you're going to allow that to dry, and then we may extend that in just a little bit with the dry rubbing. What I'm going to do is I want to make some sparkly things go on here on the spider web, some dew So what we're going to do is we're going to just take on the top ledge of this, we're going to do some long, short, like strong white, no water in the white this time. And make it be like it's got dew sitting on it. So just like a skip line. Try not to measure it too much. Squinting at it to see how it looks as I do it. I think that looks pretty special. Real strong is the key to this. If you have any water in your brush at all, it won't look right. We're going to add sparkle here on the spider's web. I think let's go ahead and make a little bit of a highlight on his legs, or her legs, I guess. You know, maybe we'll call her Charlotte, right? That's like very original of that, huh? And I think we'll float on Charlotte with just a little bit of Indian turquoise. And then just on one side. Maybe on the other side too. I know that we need to necessarily walk this in, but I wanted to cover it on here anyway. If you get your dry rub brush, which is a big dome stencil brush, rub off all of this traditional burnt sienna, and then start where it is floated, and you can walk it into your area, and you can extend that float just a little bit. I'm going to do it right next to that float. Okay. I think that's enough. I don't want it to come in too far. Okay, and now that I've found my tape, I'm going to tape that line with some Scotch tape, because there's no sense working harder than we have to. Can I see my line? Okay, the stretchy tape will not work on this material because it's too, what do you call it? Oh, I'm going to have to get a different light source over here. Stretchy tape is too, it pulls the fabric as you, okay, so it bunches the fabric up because of the stretch. So you're going to have to freehand ovals and things like that if you're painting on this new Rocklon canvas material. Okay, and then we get out our makeup applicator. I get mine at Walmart, where I get just about everything else these days because I don't have a choice. And I think. Gotta decide on a color. Okay, I decided that the color is burnt orange. I go around my pumpkin stem. Because these applicators don't suck up paint, they don't bleed under as much as other applications do when you're stenciling or stippling. Okay, I'm going to go right over my pattern. Okay. Okay, we'll do the rest of that by hand. Give us a second coat, and we'll take that paint, the tape off. Always take your tape off right away when you're taking fabric. Look how nice and straight that line is. I tape my tape to the edge of the table when I'm waiting for it to dry, and then when it's dry I crumple it up and put it away. See how bad I can screw that line up while I'm under here? So then you know that if you were doing this, that you might want to tape that line before you put your stem on. The only thing about a taped line and basing a pattern is that what you end up with sometimes is a seam where the ridge of the tape is underneath your base coat. In this particular case, it's probably not a big deal. But it's also not a big deal to go around it either. Okay. Debating about my peekaboo letters down there. We'll have to see what we end up with. Right now I'm not liking them at all. It's hard to do an arch with letters that have shapes and stuff. Okay. Get that on camera, cute. Okay, that just gives us one more element of border. As you can see, I have made some changes. I was not happy with the green. I wasn't happy with the color it was before that. And so I took it out completely, although I missed a little corner here. And now I base coated this with milk chocolate. And I'm going to wood grain it now. And up here I've put on my my band, which you saw me do, but then the leaves here are, I'm trying to think, honey brown, and the pumpkin is going to be the traditional burnt sienna as soon as I get it the right color. I started in the wrong color. So now what we're going to do is we're going to float with some strong floats of traditional burnt umber, and we're just going to make a little wood grain and stuff in here. Get it kind of just little interesting things, a little bit of wobble here and there. When we go inside these things right here, we'll put in little extra wood grains. Close up for you. Okay, so we're just going to float. You'll have a pattern. Although it's, I think, much easier if you don't follow a pattern. Just kind of keep things straight, except for when they're not. Because planks on a tree kind of do run fairly straight. We're going to carve in this. I liked the peekaboo saying, but I just didn't like that banner. Yeah, this is one of the problems about me doing this way, but I do think that I would hope that it's more interesting. Okay, we'll dry brush. We'll get an old, there's a Patty's favorite dry brush that is almost become a mop. I have abused it terribly. I will get dry paint, I'll flick it on the paper towel, and just put in some highlight here and there. In between my plank stuff that I did. This is kind of a dry brush, not so much paint in the brush, not very juicy loaded, just scumbling on some paint in rows. I'm making a mess. Making this look like it's carved into the wood, so I've got a wash, just a nice thin coat of the dark burnt umber. That's a little too heavy. Just want one more coat to cover up my graphite, make it more even. So that's two little soft coats. The wood plank, or wood banner now, this is just changed in this afternoon. We've already talked about. And then we're going to shade next to these letters with black. Okay. It's getting awfully cute. I really liked the drawing when I drew it out. Too bad you can't have it like just complete itself and then you know exactly what you're doing. Sorry for the changes. I see people that don't get the DVD don't know that I ever had changes. Or that we had a jam fest going, or that we had all kinds of things happening around here. Okay, we are going to float on the letters with a little tight, controlled float. Nothing really bold, very controlled, not very well blended. You know, not blended either, but just on the one, and then what side is this? The left side of our letters. Not too runny like that. I am breaking the cardinal rule of painting right now. I have my palette on one side, and I have my water on the other side. That is a recipe for disaster. So I'm going to put my palette right on top of my piece, at least so I'm not traveling over my piece with a sloppy brush. Not a good idea. Line in our stems on our leaves with thinned traditional burnt umber. Follow the curve. Try not to make them straight. Once you get the lines on there for the stems, then what you'll do is you'll bring out branches, or whatever they call those things. Veins, that's what it is. You just follow the stem and then let it lead out into the vein. And we want to extend the veins on the blue into the leaves so that they can be seen. Keeping that line smooth. So the color we were using to do that was honey brown. And we'll add a honey brown stem up here to our pumpkin. This is going to be a simplified little pumpkin. Up here, we don't want this one to take away, so we'll give it a little bit of slip slap. And we based that one in the traditional burnt sienna, so let's give it a little milk chocolate. No, that's not going to be light enough. Pardon me. A little bit of the honey brown. No. And we're going to do the same thing with our stems over here. We're going to use our thinned traditional burnt umber. Curve them. Much bigger stems and veins, because you can see these puppies. And those veins just kind of go off into the areas where we have the curls on the leaf. Okay, we're trying a little bit of cherry red on the sides of our pumpkins, just to kind of warm that puppy up a little bit, give it a little excitement. I think I like that. Okay, repeat on the other side. Just a little bit of this. This is not to get too carried away with it. Straight on down the sides. Then I'm kind of scrubbing it back and forth to walk it out just a little bit. We're going to take some primary yellow, and we're going to use our little dome scumblers, and we are going to rub on some leaf highlights. Get a little yellow going in the leaves. Just here and there. You know, in the areas that they'll fit, not over the whole thing. And they're kind of spotty more than they are regular. Don't let it go all the way out to the end, because then we'll have the same interest going all the way over the whole thing. Okay, so we just get some on there. Keep it off your blue. It will not be attractive. All right, I'm liking that. So now we'll go down here, down to these guys. And these will be slightly bigger scumbles. Still random, not in the same area, not the same size. Just adds a little brightness to those leaves, like they're changing colors. On our leaves over here, what we're going to do is float to separate with russet. And then we're going to float some of these inside corners with C strokes along the edges of some of them. Round that over a little bit. I'm going to add interest to this with the russet. It's a nice float, it's not a tight float. Let it fade out. We'll add a couple more colors or something to these if we think that we like it. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of our cherry red and we will pop some of the edges of the leaves. Now this, we want to walk our interest to where we want it. Don't want very much of it. So we want just maybe these tips here, not too much more than that. Just pop it out. Okay, we'll take just a little bit of the russet on some of these leaves up here just to add interest. I feel like I'm whispering at you. It's fall and it's beautiful out. I want to go play in the leaves. Except for that means I'd have to rake them. I did a bunch of fall planting though, which was very nice. Hopefully in spring they all live. Okay, so get over there. Okay, now my favorite part, we're going to spatter, because I think I'm going to call this thing a done deal. It's been a difficult one for me. I went back and forth a lot, but I like it a lot too now. Okay, so I want to spatter some gold over here on our ends of our leaves. So I'm going to pick on first, just like when we were talking about earlier about the value changes of things, I'm going to pick first on honey brown. We need a heavy-handled brush. I always test spatters off there. And what you want to do is you want to anchor your brush. We don't want this to intensity or value to change or jump too much. So first we do this color. When we get done with this color, we can do something a little bit brighter and more daring. We want to keep it off of the upper part of our blue. Okay, ooh, careful about sliding things around on top of it though. So I'm just anchoring it and aiming. Good grief. And I have a 6-foot wide table here and I have no space. Okay, now I want to go into the bright yellow. And I want to just give it a pop. On the leaves. Okay. Let's see, what do we want to do next? And I think we want to go with our desert turquoise. I think we'll go Indian turquoise. And we're going to use that on the blue area. Okay, so we're going to come out here. I'm not anchoring that, it's more like a snow kind of effect. But I am pointing it where I want it. These almost like stars. And come down here. Okay. I think we need some of this yellow in our pumpkin eyes. If we don't like some of the spots that go on our cat, spit on a paper, on a Q-tip, and just clean them up. A little black paint will take that off too. Black shows everything. Okay, that's a little bit better. And I think, let's see, what else do we need on there, guys? I think we'll share some of the love up here with the, we're going to go straight into the yellow. Right up across the top. And I think it's actually got to show that spatter. I'm going into yellow plus the honey brown. Anchor it. And have each of the ends of each of those leaves spattered.